Hey, folks, you're listening to the Jobs Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Hendricks, and today we have Ross Garcia with us. Ross has a distinction of being a master diver with the Navy, and he's also the author of a really interesting book about master divers and all their adventures, and it is called Look Through Your Faceplate Window, and I recommend that you look that book up. It's pretty interesting. Ross, thanks for joining me today.
Well, it's good to be here, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to get the word out there about Navy diving. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I don't know much other than you dive underwater, but that's where I really have a surface level, to borrow a horrible pun, uh, knowledge of what your career is like. So let's start off with a little history of where you were born and kind of your upbringing and what made you pursue a career in the Navy.
Well, first of all, I had no idea before I entered the military that I would even think about being a Navy diver, much less work in the water. I I grew up in Texas. I spent my young life in Garland, Texas, and young adult life near Corpus Christi, Texas. I call Alice, Texas, my hometown. And I I finished diesel mechanic school in Beeville, Texas in 1984, and I worked in the oil field for a while here in Texas. And in the mid to late 80s, we began refining imported oil. So put us out of a job in a nutshell. So I, a
Hmm.
little bit too prideful to stand in the unemployment line. So I kind of aimlessly wandered into the military just looking for a way to support my family and keep working. So I did. And look, I my first duty station was Long Beach, California, and once I got to my first duty station, I had no idea a Navy dive program existed at the time. So I met one guy from Belize, Honduras. His name was Edwin Beeks, and he had a strange Caribbean accent. It was strange to me because I'd never left South Texas or Texas for that matter, and he was an interesting guy. He was lean and mean. He was carved out like a bar of soap. Fantastic shape. He got me ready for Navy dive school, and in 1991 I went to dive school, and the rest was kind of history from there. Still making history, but man, it seems like a lifetime ago.
What type of physical preparation do you have to do? I mean, I'm sure you're doing a lot of swimming, but is there anything unique to the training that you would do to prepare yourself for a career as a diver?
I, you really have to be in good aerobic shape. A lot of running, swimming for sure. Although we didn't swim a whole lot, while you're in the water, you're just kind of working. I think swimming is mostly to excel in your water confidence, your ability to be in the water all the time. So
Hmm.
certainly kept me in shape. And so yeah, so if you a good candidate for to be a Navy diver, somebody who played ball in high school, some kind of outdoor activity. It takes a lot of endurance for sure, but maybe not necessarily a power lifter or
Hmm.
a bodybuilder. Somebody who's really mastered their body weight with good endurance is is how I view the preparation for.
So if you were a competitive swimmer or if you played water polo or something along those lines that was physical and
Yes,
you're in the water, that might give you a leg up.
yes, yeah. It's a good alignment of preparation for sure.
So the dive aspect, when you first get into your training, official training in the Navy, do you do you run into a lot of people that well, this isn't for me. I didn't realize I thought I was comfortable with the water, but I don't think I am that far down, or how does
Oh
that?
yeah, for sure, for sure. It's not for everybody for sure, and I think for those who've been in the water polo is a really good preparation for dive school because you really gain that sense of water confidence. But I would say that the attrition rate. Uh, the attrition rate, maybe 25-30%. I haven't really viewed those numbers in a long time, but you really really need to be prepared for, especially in the early phases of school, because that's really where they really assess your desire to be there and be a Navy diver, because it is a teamwork career field, whether it's in the military or it's in the commercial industry. Uh, uh, so so for sure, the early part of training is all scuba related, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, scuba, and get a lot of water time. You have to tread water a lot, stay afloat with heavy tanks on your back, and the other part is they assess how well you work with others, how well you follow orders, the attention to detail and maintaining scuba equipment,
Yeah.
and there's no exception. It's you're either all in or you're all out. So
How long is the training that you go through to first get involved in the program?
when I went in, it was about 10 weeks. I think it's a little longer now, 13 weeks, and you can expect during the course of the training, in addition to the physical fitness activities, you learn about diving physics, the gas laws, a lot about diving life equipment maintenance,
Hmm.
to include working with oxygen, pure oxygen, how to mix gases, how to work with compressors, dive compressors, and maintain air cleanliness. And then there's the unique part about it, and I think the best part of it is learning a little bit of hyperbaric oxygen medicine, because part of being a diver, when you don the helmet and you dive deep, you have to be prepared to exit the water quickly and enter a recompression chamber. So you learn how to operate a recompression chamber as part of fulfilling decompression protocols, and you really have to be spot on what you're doing. You have to really know what you're doing without exception. So yeah, and go
I got
ahead.
a I got a couple of questions, and these are very basic questions. They're just
Okay.
kind of a rapid fire kind of a deal. How deep do you go when you are certified to be a Navy diver? Is there a depth limit that you have?
Well, so the there are some limitations. Depends on the duty station you're at. In very few commands, you can dive as deep as a few hundred feet, 500-600 feet. That's called a saturation diving,
Okay.
where you stay on the bottom of the ocean floor for specific missions, mostly testing and evaluation. You stay on there. You live in a habitat, and you undergo lengthy decompression obligations before you surface. So normally, if you're diving on a surface applied type application, that's where you don a helmet and you have an air hose supplying your dive helmet with the air that you need to breathe and do useful work. Yeah, you usually you qualify 180 feet on air. You can go up to 285 feet, 300 feet on mixed gas, depending on what you got to do, what your mission is. And then, of course, a lot of the commands or shore duties are repair commands. And typically, you're not any deeper than 60 feet, because you just need to go to the maximum depth of the ship's keel or
Hmm.
submarine's hull to do the repairs, emit the repairs. So it varies on capability and what your duty station needs you to do. So there's the variation right there.
Is the school, when you're done with the school, are you certified in all of those depths, or does that as basically you leave thinking, okay, I'm down to this depth, but if I want to do that, I have to go to a separate school, or is it all in one place you're done?
No, no, it's really all in one place. You're done as far as depth.
Okay.
Now, it's really specific to your command. So, for example, if I graduate to Navy second class dive school, I come right out of boot camp, go to dive school. If you are assigned to, let's say, the Southwest Regional Maintenance Center in San Diego, California, where they conduct underwater repairs to ships and submarines, and you might go to a depth of 60 feet constantly, or 30, mostly 30 feet, because you're inside ballast tanks that are pressurized a depth equal to about 25 feet, 30 feet. Or if you get assignment to like a mobile diving and salvage unit 1 or 2, one's in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, the other is in Virginia Beach, Virginia, uh, you uh, you could dive on mixed gas to deeper than 200 feet on a
Hmm.
mixture of helium and oxygen. So physically, you're expected to dive to those depths, and it's up to the diving supervisor to plan the decompression obligations to make sure we do everything we can to avoid decompression sickness or other injuries that might occur, like arterial gas embolisms. So for sure, you're capable of diving to deeper depths for sure once you graduate dive school. Or if you choose to be a saturation diver, you go to the experimental diving unit there in Panama City, Florida, and where they conduct saturation dives in recompression chambers, and the guys will stay down there for days, testing equipment, doing experiments, or maybe developing other decompression tables for certain applications, or whatever they need to do to fulfill their obligations.
When we were talking before the interview started, you brought up a
Mm-hmm.
good point that I didn't realize is that you kind of highlighted it a second ago when you said if you come out of boot camp and you go right to dive school. I was under the impression before we spoke that you had to be a certain rank before you could even apply for a dive school. But
Mm-hmm.
can you elaborate on what we were talking about earlier?
Sure, sure. So during my time, you had to go to a skilled school, Navy service school first before you apply to dive school and serve a little bit of time in the fleet. Now you can go to boot camp, come out of boot camp, and then go straight in the dive school.
Hmm.
And so you progress through your rank by taking uh, examination tests to promote from E1 to E2 all the way to E6. That's in the Navy. That's first class petty officer. And to promote to the rank of E7 or chief petty officer, you are boarded. So, uh, so all the way from the time you get out of dive school, you take tests to advance. Of course, you're evaluated by your superiors on your performance. So to perform well, to learn your skill and apply it well, uh, and to master all the skills that need to happen before you attain qualifications. For example, the qualification route is different from progressing in rank. So when you get out of dive school, you earn the dive pin, second class diver. Now you get that pin, then you got to go to your first command, and whatever those skill sets are at the first command, for example, at the mobile dive and salvage units, you have to master all the comprehensive skills in salvaging, harbor clearance, mixed gas, and recompression chamber operation. There's some expeditionary skills there too. So you have to master all those in a training and qualification program to maintain your second class dive pin. That's called the Diving and Salvage Warfare Specialist pin. And you transfer to another command, and as long as you perform well, you progress through the ranks, and the command master divers and the fleet master divers are convinced that you might make a good diving supervisor, so they'll send you to first class dive school. The first class dive school is once you graduate from there, you learn what you learn there is how to supervise dives, how to calculate gas consumptions, enough gas for long missions, some diving supervisory skills. And so once you make first class diver, you're expected to lead dive teams autonomously. And so once you make rank or you're promoted to chief petty officer, that puts you in a position to where a seasoned first class diver, chief petty officer, can request to be evaluated by the Navy master diver community to qualify master diver. It's not a school. It is an evaluation of all the master divers to see if you have the skills, mostly the comprehensive skills to maintain an excellence under pressure, to resolve the most challenging situations that occur. And it's an evaluation where drills are imposed on you. You actually go out to sea, you're diving real men and women, sons and daughters of our country. You put them in the water, they impose some dive drill scenarios, and you have to successfully pass them, not just barely or just getting by. There's no D minuses or D pluses. You really have to score A pluses all the time to get through there, because you're trusted with other people's sons and daughters in the water. So
Yeah, that's
you know
important.
so there's the difference. There's rank and qualification, and the threshold is when you obtain the rank of chief petty officer. That's E7. That puts you in the pre-qualification requisite to apply to be evaluated to be a Navy master diver.
You had mentioned that you would be in charge of a dive team. Is there a certain number of personnel that are assigned to a team? Is it typically 5, 10, 15, or how does that break down?
Well, to a scuba team, it's normally 5 people, 6 people, minimum of 4. And I'm kind of recalling some old dive manual revisions, older revisions here. Could be different now, but it's about the same. And when you have a surface supply team, you need at least 7 guys, or 6 people to do some underwater repairs. If you got a big salvage project, you'll need at least a team of 3 teams of 10, 12. Usually a deploying salvage company is 17 people. That's 16 enlisted. That includes a master diver and then one dive-in officer. And so it depends on the mission. For example, we had in 2007 we responded to the Minnesota bridge collapse
Oh,
on August 1st, 2007. So the mission was pretty big. It was the name of that particular skill set was harbor clearance. So in addition to recovering victims, we had to clear the rubble, restore the commercial waterway. So that took us 3 teams of. We had 3 teams of 10. So we had 30 Navy divers out there, and of course, since it was high profile, we had Navy divers, not only from the Navy but from the Army and some other branches, Coast Guard, come get some in water time to help relieve the stresses of the single dive teams. So it's just dependent. Another mission that's always referred to out there is the USS Monitor recovery that occurred in the late '90s. 3 years to recover the Monitor. The ironclad Monitor was a Civil War ship that sank off the coast of Morehead City, North Carolina, and so there's dive teams, constantly diving around the clock on on a salvage and rescue ship with some support craft. And so you needed at least 30 people, at least, to run the surface supply teams and the recompression chamber, because they're applying the surface decompression techniques to safely decompress the Navy divers. And so it's just mission dependent. For a saturation dive, it takes a big crew. Not only the crew to get underwater to submerge for days, but also the support craft up above that tethers the bottom habitat to ensure that they've got plenty of gas, communications, and that involves a ship. Always involves a ship. So that's a pretty big that's a
yeah.
pretty big call there of people to get that done.
This may be, you use the term mission specific, and my
Hmm.
question may fall under that umbrella, but do you have
Hmm.
a certain time limit that you can be in the water? Like, to use the bridge collapse example that you brought up a moment ago.
Hmm.
Did you go inside like a shift work kind of a deal, and then you're in the decompression, then you're
Oh,
off for a day, or I don't know how that works?
well, decompression is depth and time dependent. So if you are, let's say, at 100 feet and a feet of seawater, and you spend, let's say, a half an hour there, you might you're going to run into some decompression obligations, in water decompression, or if that's opposed to the Minnesota bridge collapse. The maximum water depth was about 25 feet of water. So we stayed in no decompression obligations, the entire time. But when you're recovering an aircraft off the bottom of the ocean floor and it's in 235 feet or 218 feet of seawater, like the USS Monitor was, you have to uh, plan for conducting some in-water decompression stops, and then leave your last stop in the water, usually 50 or 40 feet of seawater. Get the guys up and over on deck. They better undress. Take some you can't exceed 5 minutes, but by the time you leave your last stop, to get them to 50 feet of seawater in the chambers. So there's a lot of. It really is something to watch to see the surface decompression obligations, and then get those guys in the recompression chamber, press them to 50 feet of seawater, and to make sure those off. It takes a lot of teamwork. So it's always time and depth dependent. So and it just depends on what the mission is and where you're at in the world.
The example that you used where they came up from 200 and I think you said 17 feet of water.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To use that example, when someone is in a decompression chamber, how long would they need to be in that in order to be safe to exit?
It's it's depth and time dependent. For example, if they had stayed down there for 15 minutes, it's quite possible that they could fulfill all their decompression chamber obligations in the water. If they were down there for 20 in the water, if they're down there for 20 minutes, that would place them in in more time to fulfill decompression obligations in the water. So the diving supervisor may elect to remove them from the water, get them undressed, get them in the recompression chamber for a certain amount of time to fulfill those decompression obligations. So if they're in the water for 30 minutes at that depth, they could be there for an hour and a half.
Okay.
If they're in there for less time, they may be 25 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. So it's always depth and time dependent. So there's in the U.S. Navy Dive Manual, there's a set of decompression schedules. We call them schedules, tables and schedules. The table is the depth, and then the schedule is how long have they been under in the water. And when they leave the bottom, that's your bottom time. So you look at the table and schedule, and that schedule will tell the diving supervisor how much decompression obligation they have to undergo to safely decompress to avoid decompression sickness. And so again, it's depth and time dependent, right?
The inside a hyperbaric chamber, is it a cot in there or a chair with some books, or they just kind of have to pass the time, right?
Well, yeah, it seems like in my experience, boy, the time really goes by quick.
Okay.
The oxygen periods, they're breathing oxygen inside the decompression chamber. Recompression chamber is a proper term. So they'll have maybe 20 or 30-minute oxygen periods, and then they'll have to take an air break to avoid the symptoms of central nervous system oxygen toxicity. And usually there's no books, or there's no additional
Entertainment or
thing.
anything?
Yeah, sometimes some chambers, if they're, certainly not in the Navy, there's no television or anything like that. So, usually what happens when you're inside the recompression chamber and you're fulfilling decompression obligations, there's always a trained inside tender, and we're always monitoring for symptoms that may emerge of decompression sickness, type 1 or 2. One is mostly pain. Type 2 is maybe neurological symptoms. We're always monitoring for anything that may emerge during decompression. And of course, we're always, through the mask, we're always talking about how the dive went, and but most of the time we're just relaxing. The time goes by pretty quick inside during surface decompression. which is different from treating somebody who does come up with a symptom. It's a lot longer, but even that time goes by pretty quick too.
Now, what you're treating, the term is the bins, correct? Is that if you come up too quick, you'll get the bins?
That's right. So there's two uh, two illnesses that we look for: arterial gas embolism and decompression sickness. Essentially, essentially, those two have the same symptoms: serious decompression sickness and arterial gas embolism. And they both involve the emboli, what we call emboli, or bubbles that come out of solution or wind up in the circulatory system somehow. It's how that bubble manifests inside the circulatory system. For example, arterial gas embolism is a rupture of the alveoli, the air sacs in your lungs, and that happens while you're ascending. That emboli could become lodged inside your arterial system, and the first place that blood goes to after it leaves the lungs is your heart, your brain, and that emboli could cause a stoppage of blood flow to those areas, and those develop neurological symptoms very serious. They're usually dramatic, and if we catch them right in the first 10, 20 minutes, we can recompress somebody and they'll be okay.
Hmm.
Decompression sickness happens when you ascend too fast, and we always refer to Henry's law, the Henry's gas law. And if you come up too fast, those bubbles will come out of solution, usually in your venial system, and they'll begin to block blood flow to tissues in your body, causing you pain, mostly pain. But if those bubbles get lodged in your spinal cord or brain, they cause neurological symptoms. So, and even if you follow those decompression tables to the T, you're still susceptible to decompression sickness. Very rare.
Hmm.
Usually, when folks they become injured due to decompression sickness, it's usually because they missed a decompression obligation, or they ignored it, or uh, or something maybe catastrophic happened where maybe they came impinged underwater, and it took a little time to get out of entrapment or something like that, and then they had to go into a long exceptional exposure decompression obligation. But other than that, usually, if you're in good physical condition, especially aerobically, where you can breathe really good, you can really avoid those instances of decompression sickness. I hope that made sense.
No, it did. I
Hmm.
didn't really know exactly what was going on, and
Hmm.
I'm landlocked. We don't deal with hyperbaric
Sure.
chambers around here.
Uh-huh.
Although I do think there are some wound care centers that use those hyperbaric chambers for
Oh
treating
yes.
wounds, correct?
Oh yes. In fact, I really encourage. Since we're talking about jobs, if you go in the military and you become a Navy diver, you know, I always encourage somebody who enters military service to enter a career field where you can use that in the civilian life. So
Hmm.
one thing about Navy diving is don't get me wrong, I had a great time. Probably wouldn't have done anything else in the Navy, and now that I look back, but Navy diving in the ocean is for young people. You know,
Yeah.
uh, once you approach retirement age in the military career, you're expected to supervise and lead. When you become the master diver, you're expected to lead not only just dive teams, but things involving logistics in Navy diving and training in Navy diving. So you need to be a good manager. But if I think right now about the way I feel now, there's no way I could do half those things I did when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
For sure. And then, but one of the good career fields, I think I encourage Navy divers or anybody in the even in the commercial dive field. I really encourage them to, as they go through their dive training, to uh, to look into the Undersea Hyperbaric Medical Society and become a certified hyperbaric technologist. Now, there's no regulation that you have to be a certified hyperbaric technician or a specialist, but those are good career fields for Navy divers, uh, and what you really learn is to operate monoplace. A monoplace recompression chambers is a recompression chamber where only one patient goes inside, and they usually breathe compressed. Usually, the chamber is compressed with 100% oxygen to help heal wounds or radiation injuries after you get treated for cancer. Or it's just a phenomenal career field to get into, and that's really what I really encourage everybody to do if they go to any dive school, even if they want to be a recreational diver, like a PADI trainer, PADI master diver,
Hmm.
a NAUI master diver. I think in parallel, it's a good idea to obtain the skills of a hyperbaric recompression chamber operator, because it's a really it's an emerging industry, and it's only gonna grow as we try to keep our health population healthier.
Yeah.
Get people. Other indications for hyperbaric oxygen therapy is diabetic foot ulcers, irradiation cystitis, for those men who've undergone a lot of radiation therapy for prostate cancer, and usually those folks not who've had radiation in the growing area, they experience degradation in the ability to urinate properly. And what's really incredible about it is you can have radiation therapy 12 years later, not even know that hyperbarics existed to help
Yeah.
restore your normality in this field. And 12 years later, uh, especially in the men, I can't really speak too much for the women, uh, but the men experience almost full normality restored in urination and bowel movement.
Really?
And I tell you, if you've had radiation therapy in your growing area, and you experience a, a, a blood clotting and urination, and if you're going to go undergo radiation therapy in that area, and it's upcoming, and really strongly encourage those who are going to do that, undergo radiation therapy, to look into post treatment of radiation therapy, even if you have radiation therapy to other parts of your body that creates radiation necrosis, degradation of skin cells. And normally in young men and women, if you're in good health, that'll restore over time. But for some people, it's really difficult to restore that tissued area. And hyperbaric oxygen therapy really, really accelerates that
Hmm.
to get that closed up. So that's an encouraging field that I encourage all divers to get into. And I tell you this, the industry right now really look for nurses, MAs, and LVNs to really manage that career field. But I tell you, people may oppose me on this opinion, but I really think that divers, Navy divers, or commercial divers who've operated recompression chambers in the field of deep sea diving, they really understand what that patient is going through.
Yeah.
They so they understand the importance of watching that patient, not only in the physiology behind how the patient is responding or what they're going through, but also the managing of the safety aspects of recompression chamber operations. So important that the medical industry doesn't really get to that. Or it's really difficult in my eyes for to hire an operator of a recompression chamber to operate a chamber, and they really don't know or never experienced what's really happening inside the recompression chamber.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of value there, a lot of value.
Well, that's the experience that you have from being in the inside and then operating it versus just this is how we're taught to run the machine.
Yeah, that's right. When you descend in the decompression chamber, it's just like descending in the water. You have to clear your ears, you have to equalize your ears, you have to equalize the cavity spaces.
Hmm.
And when you ascend, you never hold your breath, and an experienced diver or an experienced recompression chamber operator who's actually administered therapy inside a chamber, they understand, and they know exactly what's going on. So it's just I feel strongly about that. I really
Yeah.
do.
Let's talk about the job that you do when you're underwater. Is there
Hmm.
one you've mentioned salvage and harbor clearing and repair? I'm getting the impression that there's a lot of cutting. I'm assuming it's some kind of a torch, underwater torch, a lot of welding, underwater welding. Does that make up the bulk of what you do, or are there just so many countless things?
I think I think to be a good Navy diver or commercial diver, you have to have mechanical skill.
Okay.
You have to have um, a skill of a machinist, a mechanic, or a field mechanic is a primitive word. Technician is a better word. Diesel technician, auto technician, an electrician. Uh, you really need to have those skills, and think of it as diving as an enabling capability to get you to the project. That's
Okay.
the value of diving. You get uh, that Navy ship or that oiler that delivers millions of gallons of oil to the port, and they have an underwater appendage like a propeller or a circular or a pump that supplies cooling water to the boiler that has to be changed out. And think of the times or the money lost if you had to dry dock that ship or vessel.
Yeah.
In the Navy, think about that destroyer or aircraft carrier that's ready, that needs to be deployed to defend our nation, and they have a failure that requires dry docking. Think of all the money and time that's spent. So that's what diving is. It enables you to avoid in the underwater repair industry, enables you to avoid those costly uh, situations where you got to pull something from the water and do
Mm.
its repairs in a shipyard or something like that. If you can do it in the water, you can save some mission time or downtime, and that's the value. The other thing is the confidence to clear debris. There is some explosive training that's available at certain commands, certain um, missions. But overall, having a good mechanical ability is really what is required. Even in the recreational industry, you really got to have some mechanical skills. If what would you do if you didn't have mechanical skills? A good friend of mine used to tell me that, look, if you don't have any other skills besides turning wrenches or being able to troubleshoot or think underwater, the only thing you are is just an underwater helmet operator. So that's not much good to anybody.
One question I am curious about that helmet, it's such an iconic image when you see one of those diving helmets, the big steel ones or metal ones, whatever they're made
Yeah.
out of,
Hmm.
brass, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do those things weigh?
Well, it depends on what area you're in. Now, me, I did not work in the Mark V deep sea diving suit and dress. That's a little before my time, but I
Okay.
I got to wear one in an opportunity to get in the water. I just did it to. I was in a port off of in an area off of Hawaii, where the guy just offered you a chance to don the deep sea diving suit just to take a picture, get underwater.
Sure.
And man, I tell you, I'm glad I didn't have to work in that suit. So all those guys who are listening to me, all of my guys who I admired going through the career field, good on you. But I'm glad those days are over.
Yeah. What
But
what's the equipment that you typically use now? You're not using tanks on your back. You have a hard line, right?
right, we do dive scuba. That's a technique we use
Okay.
for just rapid deployment. Usually when you're diving surface applied, where it's a helmet, a hard plastic Lexan helmet,
Hmm.
and the envelope is sealed around your neck with some with a neoprene kind of rubber like seal. Then you wear a wetsuit. If you're in cold water, you wear a hot water suit sometimes, and so it's a lot more mobile than the old Mark V deep sea diving suit, where that thing you had to get in a big enveloped suit that covered your whole body, including your feet and your hands, and that suit uh, it it was the mount for the Mark V deep sea diving helmet. So you're in an envelope, and in the modern days there's Kirby, what we call Kirby Morgan rigs. Kirby Morgan is a brand name, and the name of the rigs that we use are during my time was a Superlight 17, the Mark 21, MK 21, and the KM 37. Those are Kirby Morgan rigs that the Navy authorizes for use, and they're a lot more mobile. They're lighter. They're still heavy. They weigh about almost 50 pounds, but they're about 1 pound negatively buoyant and in the water. But it makes for a lot more mobile, more agile Navy diver than the old Mark V deep sea diving suit. There's full face mask, scuba masks that we use. Those are the Mark 20 masks that we use to dive inside ballast tanks and keep us safe while the atmosphere is gas free. When you get inside an enclosed space, those enclosed spaces have to be gas free. Gas gets tested before we can take off our masks. And yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. Those pretty modern stuff. A lot of technology out there, but the physics is still the same.
If you were just starting out, if someone came to you and said, "Hey, I'm going to join the Navy. I want to be what you are, a master Navy diver." What advice can you give me to, cuz we all make mistakes, we all do things looking back go, "I should have done that. I should have done this." What advice would you give somebody to excel in your career?
Well, do your best. Do
Yeah.
your very best for sure. I mean, in to be a Navy diver, first of all, you have to be in good shape, and you have to have a lot of confidence in yourself. Build the confidence in yourself, and that means learn everything, not just how it operates, but when you operate it, what is everything else doing around you? And you had mentioned my book when you opened up here in this podcast, and
Mhm.
one of the things I write about is the evolution to becoming operators in just about every field in America. An operator versus a craft master, being a master at your craft. And you want to really master the craft of Navy diving because it enables you to critically think, not only in day-to-day routine operations to be efficient in time management, uh, but it enables you to critically think in those time critical and emergent situations where you understand when something's going wrong, that your brain is already enabled to solve the problem before you even get there, to deal with the casualty. So I would encourage somebody who wants to be a Navy diver. You have to become a master at your craft, and you really want to do everything you can to progress. Uh, being a master diver is not for everybody. You have to be able to lead people without a
Yeah.
doubt. There's no uh, you have to be, you can't be indecisive. You have to be decisive. And then we need those first class divers who are good managers of maintenance,
Hmm.
who are good at life cycle management in Navy dive. A lot of maintenance, a lot of quality assurance maintenance to keep the gear safe. And there's no uh, there's no trying to think of it.
There's no good enough. It's kind of like a guy that
It's
is packaging a parachute.
right.
You either get it
Exactly,
right or it's wrong. There's no, well,
exactly,
that's good enough. And in your line of
exactly.
work, that seems like the perfect analogy for it.
That was really really good.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I get it right
you want to,
sometimes.
yeah, you want to have that reputation as the go-to guy, and if you don't want that, then I really encourage you to choose another field, please,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of investment in taxpayers' dollars for to send somebody to dive school. So
One of the
it's
things that you were talking about there is you need to know what's going on, but then kind of the downstream effects. And if you push a button, you should know what is happening when you push that button.
that's
Not
right,
that if I just push it, then the light comes on over there. Well,
that's
why is the
right,
light coming on? Like you need to know
that's right,
everything essentially.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. I identify the push button people as operators.
Yeah.
The craftsman knows exactly what's happening after they push that button.
And if the light doesn't come on, what do they need to do to ensure that
Exactly.
it does? Yeah.
Exactly. And the answer is not call a mechanic. The
Yeah.
answer is I think I know what's the matter. I'm going to go fix it. Right.
Are most of the people in your line of work, is there a typical personality style, like mostly introverts, extroverts? I know we mentioned mechanically inclined. You've kind of hammered that part home. But do you get varied personalities, or is there a typical type of person that excels in Navy diving?
Well, that's a great question. I I've seen them both. And the way an introvert myself, you know, uh, if it's something outside of Navy diving, I'm pretty relaxed, but once I'm in the zone, I'm quick to respond to just about anything.
Mm,
And that's really the same for an extrovert, somebody who's got a big personality, a lot of charisma. I've always been that quiet guy until it came time to dive, and I really think the one thing that really stands out is somebody, a good friend of mine, told me one time, a mentor of mine, told me one time what does it. I asked him, or what does it take to be a master diver, and he said, you got to be a good man, meaning
mm.
man or woman. You got to be a good man, and that means take everything on board and don't take for granted that you're leading America's sons and daughters into harm's way. And so to your question, everybody has to take on board the sense of obligation to return that person back on deck safely. You know, so so I've seen both introverts, extroverts, uh, ego status. I've seen people fail when they're over egoed.
Yeah.
There's no, I think I've investigated diving accidents, and I think one of the contributing factors has always been over ego, doing things that you weren't prepared to do, but you thought you were.
That what you just said right there is something that I've spent my whole adult career around a large number of type A's in the fire service, and I've rubbed elbows with
Mm-hmm.
law enforcement. They're all type A, all of them.
Mm-hmm. Oh
And a
yeah.
lot of guys that were in the military that now are in the fire service. So I've spent my whole adult life career wise around a lot of driven people. And there is such a fine line to walk between confidence and arrogance.
Hmm.
And if you don't make the decision every day to keep that arrogance in check and maintain some resemblance of humility, life will hammer you. And it's usually very unpleasant when it happens.
Yep. Spot on. Spot
Yeah.
on.
Now, you also talked a second ago about you've seen that arrogance make people have made mistakes because they bought into their own hype, so to speak. But even folks that are trying their best will sometimes fail, sometimes make mistakes. We all do as human beings. What's your best advice to someone when they do make a mistake?
Well, you learn from it. One thing during my time, and why I really always refer back to my mentors. We were allowed to fail,
Yeah.
but our mentors didn't allow us to become failures.
Ah,
So learn from your mistakes. Learn from, uh, So if you're prepared, and I describe that you're all in or you're all out. If you're prepared and you have that attitude to want to be a master at your craft, if you have that drive, you know your your failures will probably be pretty small.
yeah.
Something breaks, get something bigger.
Hmm.
But if you don't have that constantly improvement attitude, those failures could be big where you can't recover. And so you have to constantly write your own lessons learned, and you combine that with wanting to be the best at your craft, the craft of Navy diving, and and then your failures will be your lessons learned, and they won't be so um, they won't be so they won't cost you.
Yeah.
Maybe a little time. We don't have all the time in the world. Our lives will end sooner or later, but you have at least you can recoup some of that time by trying something else that'll work, by learning from your failures. But if you go into a mission, a Navy diving mission, with a half-hearted attitude, the failures are going to be pretty big, I tell you.
What you said a second ago that when you were um, earlier on in your career, your failures, they defined an event. They didn't define you as a person. You were allowed
Mhm.
to fail, but it didn't own you. You learned from it and you're better because of it. That was
That's
what your
right.
supervisors tried to instill in you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's good leadership.
Yeah.
Leadership is a big part of it for sure.
One question that I wanted to ask you was you've spent a lot of time underwater at varying depths. You ever had anything come out of the blue, a set of teeth or something bump your leg or something that just made you wet your wetsuit?
Well, I tell you, I remember one time I was on the bottom of the ocean floor. This is in my younger days, and this great big fish. Doggone it! I don't know what the name of that fish is. Um, it was about as big as my kitchen table. It came up slow. It had this great big eye looking at us, and it just kind of drifted, looking at us, see what we're doing. And the only thing I could think of, I was wasting bottom time. And the only thing I could think of was that big old fish swallowing me whole.
Good grief.
And but that was the only time in my life any stories that I have underwater, animal stories. I've seen little sharks. I don't have any big shark stories to tell.
Hmm.
Um, no big shark stories. My good friend of mine, um, master diver Rick Batua. He lives in Australia. He runs a spearfishing company. He has this fantastic book called Breathe, Just Breathe, by Rick Batua. And that guy was that guy had rescued a good friend of his in Australia from a shark attack, saved his life. He was bleeding out, able to get him back to safety, and then couple of years later, my friend Rick got attacked by a shark. He was bleeding out, and the same guy who he saved him from that shark attack.
Now that's a friendship.
Yeah, and that's a good. It's a good book. Breathe. He's a good leader. It's on my website by Rick Batua. That guy is he's I think he's a master diver that a lot of us little younger guys we aspired to be like.
Yeah.
Just a
What's it
solid
like?
person.
What's it like being, most of us, I was certified to scuba dive many, many years ago, but
Mhm.
I think the deepest I ever went was maybe 50 feet, 60 feet, something along those lines. It was
Yeah.
30 plus years ago. I don't remember, but just recreational scuba diving.
Mhm.
But when you're hundreds of feet down and you're on the bottom of the ocean where nobody ever is, what's the first time you go down that depth and you're standing or almost on the bottom of the ocean? What's that like?
It's an exhilarating experience. I just when I made my first real deep dive, it was I worked up to it. Uh, did a lot of shallow diving, and usually the deeper you go, the darker it gets a little bit.
Yeah.
And we just work up to it is the best way to approach those. Anybody who hasn't done it for a while and they just decide to go to 150 feet, you're really taking a risk because your body is like a machine too. And if you don't use it, you might experience you might have a bad experience. So
Yeah.
best thing to do is to work up to it. Stay shallow where all the fish are. Get in and out of the water, make repetitive dives, and work your way up to going deep. But that first time I went deep was off the coast of Point Loma, California. That was
Yeah.
my qualification dive in Mark 12, the deep sea diving suit. And walking on the bottom, it was just fabulous. In the kelp beds look like a forest down there with just fish, colorful fish. The water was crystal clear off the coast of Southern California,
Hmm.
and it made for an impressionable experience. I can still see the Garibaldi, the orange fish, the state fish. The Garibaldi is just as if I was in the water yesterday,
Hmm.
and just sea life everywhere. And me and my dive buddy, we just couldn't believe what we saw at that depth. But it was just fabulous. That was my first time. That was
I,
at that 100 and that was 100 and I think 130 feet. I think.
hmm. I lived in San Diego when I went to college, and so
Mm-hmm.
we used to
Mm-hmm.
go. When I got certified to scuba dive, it was we went off of Mission Beach. We walked out, and I think we
Oh
only went
yeah.
50 or 60 feet down. But I used to
Oh yeah.
snorkel in La Jolla Cove and all that area. It's a beautiful area out
Oh
there to get in the
yeah.
water. Yeah,
Fantastic. My
cold though, cold.
oh yeah. Before I went to dive school, I took a PADI course just so I could get ready for it. And
Hmm.
first dive I made was in Shaw's Cove right there in Laguna Beach,
Yep.
and if it was a successful dive, then the guy who inspired me to go to dive school, we were out there doing night dives before we knew it. Looking for lobster,
Yeah,
and
I remember that. Yep, all the
yeah,
flashlights in the water when you'd
oh
go out
yeah,
onto the shoreline.
yeah. So, oh yeah, just beautiful, beautiful water.
If somebody asked you what you like most about your job, is there one particular thing that you immediately gravitate towards?
I think just about my job in the Navy is the friendships.
Yeah.
When I started, the friendships that ultimately transformed into the leaderships, and then back to the friendships that I enjoy right now, post military career. There's two organizations that I involve myself in. That's the Navy Diver Association reunion that happens every other year. I'm involved in the scholarship program that we have a very very generous contributor to that scholarship program, and then every other year I attend the Navy Master Diver Union, and at in Panama City Beach, Florida. There's the Man in the Sea Museum that I encourage everybody to go to. It's a fantastic museum history of anything that goes on in the water, and then we cap off the celebration at the Navy Coastal Systems Station. I think it's called something else now, but the Navy base right there in Panama City, Florida, right there in the pavilion. All the old guys get together from years ago, and my podcast, it inspired me to build a podcast called Deep Sea Stories.
Yeah.
And so the friendships and of the people I made friends with that got us through the long, tough missions, and ultimately the leadership aspect I enjoyed. I enjoyed leading what I call America's sons and daughters, aunts and uncles, uh, through dive missions and make them feel good about themselves to get in and out of the water. You feel that great sense of accomplishment. That's what strengthens our friendships and our bonds to decades later, gives us a reason to call on each other for a celebration, to get together, or just maybe just to talk to when folks are just feeling kind of lonely.
Hmm. Is there anything about your job that you could have done without? Every job has its downsides, but
Well, I've got my lessons learned. I think, oh, in my book I write about dealings with the mainstream media.
yeah.
You know, but I think if I could have gone back and did I dove all over the world. I think, I wish I wish I had a cell phone during my tour. I would have had more pictures.
Ah,
Uh, you know, I tell
yep.
everybody, take pictures of what you're doing.
Hmm.
I think in
Yeah.
any career field or whatever you need to take pictures. But I guess that's about it. Really, I really enjoyed my time. Well, we had some bad moments for sure, but
Yeah.
you know, really, that's about it. I wish I would have taken more pictures, and there are some duty stations I wish I would have gone to, but I still dove around the world. I was in the Persian Gulf. I lived in Italy for 2 years
Nice.
with my youngest daughter. I lived in San Diego for twice. Once in the see from '99 to 2003, and then I went back there as I was a government service employee, uh, going back to the command that I was stationed at to manage the quality assurance programs for the Navy dive systems and the recompression chambers. And a little bit different my second time around because COVID kind of sent me back to South Texas, where I'm from. But it was just great being in Southern California, and the Coronado, California area is just fantastic. Imperial Beach,
Yeah.
it was just fantastic down there, really. Mm.
If anybody ever tells you to go to Black's Beach in San Diego, don't do it. I had some guys tell me when I moved there,
Yeah,
go check out Black's Beach. Well,
yeah,
nobody told me it was a nudist beach. And then I
yeah,
walked down in there. It's
yeah.
like, oh, good
I've
grief.
heard that before. Never made
Yeah.
it there. Never made it
Yeah.
there.
They got me good. It's me and a bunch of old German guys. So I
Yeah,
quickly packed up and left. But
yeah,
yeah. Hey,
yeah.
Ross, man, this was such an interesting interview. You've got a very unique career and your book that go ahead and tell everybody your website. It's a Navy Master Divers Adventure.com. Did I get that right?
Yep, that's right. A Navy, no
Okay.
spaces. A Navy Master
Okay.
Divers Adventure.com. And the name of my podcast is Deep Sea Stories.
Okay.
I think I'm close to 20 podcasts on there now. And then
Nice.
if you look at the store, you can pick up my book, View Through a Faceplate Window, Adventures of a Navy Master Diver. And then the other book I mentioned was Breathe by Master Diver Rick Batua. It's a
Hmm.
great book, a leadership book. And you'll see some other books there on my website. One by Mr. Robert Pizzini. He's the president of the Chamber of Commerce. He's a retired Navy diver / explosive ordnance disposal officer. Mr. Robert Pizzini, and The name of his book, I'm bringing it up right now. Then you'll see my second book is The Journey to Alice, Texas is my second book. And that's about how my family migrated from Mexico to live in South Texas. And it's about how the generations of my great grandparents have, through our own will and self-determination, we've become prosperous. Self-determination is a big part of the evolution of my family. We don't get rich overnight. So self-determination, doing better, doing something better, leave the world a better place than when you found it. And the name of that book by Robert Pizzini is called Elevate Your Leadership. Mr. Pizzini is a leadership speaker. He's the president of the Chamber of Commerce there in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And his program, he gives leadership symposium. He's a phenomenal influencer. And you also see other books here by Mr. Len Starbeck. He's a diving medical technician. A diving medical technician is like a hyperbaric oxygen therapist in the civilian sector. And a good friend of mine, Mr. Michael Gilbert, he wrote a book called Foul to Anchor, where he talks about his Navy diving career. And then Mr. Lewis Busby, did an interview with Mr. Lewis Busby. His father was the late master diver Milford Busby, who passed away way back in early 1970s. But he recalls the story about his father being a Navy master diver. It's really, really, he's a professional writer, so he really brings out the motivation to pick up that book into the readers. And me and my book, Faceplate Window, I'm just an old retired guy to do the best I can to tell my story, so.
Yeah.
So.
Well, hey, anybody that serves in the military and makes a career out of it, you get my utmost respect. I've always admired the military. It wasn't a choice for me, but anybody that did it, I tip my hat to you. Thank you for your service. I know that's kind of overused phrase sometimes, but I genuinely mean it. You've earned your retirement, and I hope it's a comfortable and relaxing one.
Well, it sure is. It's I do more now that I'm retired than I did when I was in active duty.
I've heard that. Yeah.
I'm still a hyperbaric oxygen technician. I do some marketing for our organization down here, and I go out there and I encourage. I try to motivate folks who've undergone cancer treatment. They've already been whipped by radiation therapy, and I try to motivate them. Hey, look, you really could help your quality of life if you just commit a couple of months to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So that's what I do here in my spare time. All right.
Ross, thanks again, man. This was awesome. I really appreciate your time, and I hope the rest of your day is a good one.
You too, man. Be safe out there. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
And that wraps up another episode of the Jobs Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully you found that interesting. As always, I wait until the end of an interview to ask you to like, subscribe, and share. I feel it's important that I earn that support from you. Thanks again, and we will see you on the next one.